The spear that broke the alliance. The tsunami that shattered everything. One moment of betrayal that nobody saw coming, and now the entire WWE landscape has been torn apart like never before. What you're about to witness isn't just another wrestling story. This is the moment when monsters decided they didn't need a god anymore. Before we dive into the chaos, I need you to do something for me. If you love wrestling like I do, if you live for these moments that send shockwaves through the industry, hit that subscribe button right now. Join the SLAMZONE family because we're about to break down one of the most savage, most brutal, most jaw-dropping betrayals in recent WWE history. And trust me, you're going to want to be here for everything that comes next. Hit that notification bell too, because stories like this don't come around every day, and when they do, you don't want to miss a single second. Perth, Australia, October 13th. The night that changed everything. Raw was already electric, the Aussie crowd was on fire, and nobody, could have predicted what was about to unfold. Seth Rollins, the World Heavyweight Champion, was riding the highest wave of his career. Just days earlier at Crown Jewel, he'd done the unthinkable. He walked into Perth and defeated Cody Rhodes, the undisputed WWE Champion, becoming the Crown Jewel Champion. The man was unstoppable. The Vision, his faction with Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, and the legendary Paul Heyman, seemed like an unstoppable force ready to dominate WWE for years to come. The main event that night was a triple threat match. CM Punk vs LA Knight vs GUSO, all fighting for one prize, the right to challenge Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship. You could feel the tension crackling through the arena like electricity. The Aussie crowd was deafening, chanting, screaming, living every single moment. CM Punk, the best in the world, was methodical, vicious, picking his spots like the veteran he is. LA Knight brought that megastar energy, that charisma that makes you believe anything is possible. And GUSO, main event GUSO, was fighting with the heart of a champion, desperate to prove he belonged at the top. These three warriors went to war. Near falls that had the crowd gasping. Reversals that came out of nowhere. Knight hit a BFT that nearly ended it. USO connected with a superkick so clean it echoed through the arena. But Punk, that calculating genius, found his opening. He locked in the Anaconda Vice on Knight, wrenching back with everything he had. Knight's face twisted in agony. The referee was right there, checking, asking if he wanted to give up. You could see Knight fighting it, refusing to quit, but Punk had it locked in deep. Too deep. Knight had no choice. He tapped. The bell rang. CM Punk had done it. He was the #1 contender. But the story was just beginning. As Punk stood in the ring, breathing hard, soaking in what he'd just accomplished, the light shifted. That familiar music hit. The Vision was here. Braun Breaker, that absolute monster of a human being, stormed down the ramp with Bronson Reed beside him, all 330 pounds of devastating power. And behind them, the master manipulator himself, Paul Heyman, that smirk on his face like he knew something the rest of us didn't. Seth Rollins strutted out behind them, the World Heavyweight Championship gleaming on his shoulder, that Crown Jewel Championship beside it. He looked like a man on top of the world. 2 championships. A dominant faction. The respect of his peers. What could possibly go wrong? They hit the ring fast. Breaker went straight for Punk, hitting him with a devastating clothesline that turned him inside out. Reed grabbed LA Knight, lifting him up like he weighed nothing before planting him with a massive power slam. GUSO tried to fight back, but it was 3-on-3, and the Vision was destroying everything in their path. The crowd was going absolutely insane. Some were cheering the dominance. Some were booing the attack. Everyone was on their feet. Bronson Reed dragged CM Punk to the corner, climbing to the top rope with that terrifying precision. You know what's coming when Reed goes up top. That 330-pound frame about to come crashing down like a meteor. The tsunami. Reed steadied himself, looked down at Punk lying helpless below, and then launched himself into the air. The impact shook the ring. The sound was sickening. Punk wasn't moving. The tsunami had hit its target, and it was devastating. Seth Rollins stood in the center of the ring, both championships held high, a massive smile across his face. The Vision stood tall around him. Paul Heyman raised the microphone, about to address the WWE Universe. This was their moment. Their statement to the entire roster. Nobody could touch the Vision. Nobody could stop them. And then, in a split second, everything changed. The crowd gasped. The commentators went silent. Because what happened next, nobody saw coming. Not the fans in Perth. Not the millions watching at home. Not even Seth Rollins himself. Braun Breaker turned. His eyes locked on Rollins. And he charged. The spear came out of nowhere. Breaker exploded across that ring like a freight train with no brakes, spearing Seth Rollins so hard the entire ring shook. The World Heavyweight Champion crumpled like he'd been hit by lightning. His championship scattered across the mat. His body twisted in agony. The smile was gone. The confidence was gone. Everything was gone. The Perth crowd erupted. Complete chaos. Half were screaming in shock. Half were roaring in approval. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Vision was united. They were unstoppable. But Breaker stood over his fallen leader, chest heaving, eyes wild with something primal, something that had been building for weeks, maybe months. Bronson Reed stood frozen. His face showed the internal struggle playing out in his mind. This was Seth Rollins. The man who had brought him into the Vision. The man who had given him a place in the main event scene. The man who had showed him respect after Reed had nearly ended his career with 6 tsunamis months earlier. But then Reed looked at Breaker. The future. The young monster who didn't need anyone's permission to take what he wanted. Breaker stared at Reed. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The message was clear. You're either with me, or you're with him. Choose now. Time seemed to stop. The crowd held their breath. Even CM Punk, laid out in the corner, seemed to watch through the pain. Paul Heyman stood at ringside, his expression unreadable behind those sunglasses. This was the moment. The crossroads. The decision that would define everything moving forward. Bronson Reed looked down at Seth Rollins. The man was trying to crawl, trying to get up, but the spear had demolished him. Reed's jaw clenched. His massive hands balled into fists. And then, he made his choice. Reed walked to the corner, climbed to the second rope, then the top rope. Seth Rollins realized what was happening. His eyes went wide with panic. He tried to move, tried to roll away, but his body wasn't responding fast enough. And Bronson Reed, all 330 pounds of him, launched into the air. The tsunami hit with catastrophic force. The entire ring bounced. Seth Rollins' body went limp. The World Heavyweight Champion, the Crown Jewel Champion, the leader of the Vision, was unconscious in the middle of the ring, destroyed by his own men. The Perth crowd lost their minds. The noise was deafening. This wasn't just a turn. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a public execution. This was Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed making a statement that echoed through every locker room in WWE. They didn't need Seth Rollins. They didn't need anyone. They were the future, and the future had arrived. But there was one more shock coming. Paul Heyman, the special counsel, the wise man, the oracle who had stood beside Roman Reigns for years, who had aligned himself with Seth Rollins after WrestleMania, slowly climbed into the ring. Every eye in the building was on him. What would he do? Would he check on Rollins? Would he condemn Breaker and Reed? Heyman looked down at Rollins, lying broken at his feet. Then he looked at Breaker and Reed, these two powerful young superstars standing tall, breathing hard, completely in control. And Paul Heyman, with that calculated smile that has defined his career, grabbed both their wrists and raised their hands high in the air. The crowd went ballistic. Paul Heyman had made his choice. He'd chosen the future over loyalty. He'd chosen power over friendship. The Vision hadn't died. It had evolved. It had shed the weight of Seth Rollins and transformed into something more dangerous, more unpredictable, more terrifying. Braun Breaker bent down and picked up the World Heavyweight Championship. He held it high above his head, not as champion, but as a promise. A declaration. This gold was his destiny. Bronson Reed stood beside him, arms crossed, that intense stare that has become his trademark. These two men, these absolute monsters, had just announced themselves as the most dominant force in WWE. The implications were staggering. Seth Rollins, who had spent his entire career being the architect of betrayal, had finally tasted his own medicine. The man who turned on the Shield. The man who had schemed and manipulated his way to the top. Now he lay broken, betrayed by the very men he trusted. There's something poetic about that. Something brutally perfect. If you're loving this breakdown, if you're as fired up about this as I am, do me a favor right now. Smash that like button. Drop a comment below telling me what you think happens next. Does Seth come back for revenge? Does Breaker become World Heavyweight Champion? Does Reed finally get the singles push he deserves? I want to hear your predictions because this is just the beginning. And make sure you're subscribed to SLAMZONE with notifications on, because we're going to be covering every single twist and turn of this story as it unfolds. The immediate fallout from this betrayal has been absolutely nuclear. The next week on Raw, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed appeared, and the confidence was radiating off them. Paul Heyman cut a promo explaining their actions, but it wasn't really an explanation. It was a justification. He talked about how Seth Rollins had become complacent, how he'd started believing his own hype, how he'd forgotten that in WWE, you're only as good as your last match, your last win, your last statement. Heyman painted a picture of Breaker and Reed as the true main eventers, the real future of the company. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. Braun Breaker is a second-generation superstar with the genetics and the talent to be the next face of WWE. The spear alone is one of the most devastating finishers in the business. When Breaker hits that move, it looks like he's trying to break you in half. And he probably is. Bronson Reed is the most underrated powerhouse on the roster. That tsunami splash is a career ender. We've seen him hit 6 of them on Seth Rollins before. We've seen him destroy legends and rising stars alike. But Reed has always been in someone's shadow. First in NXT, then on the main roster. Now he's standing shoulder to shoulder with Braun Breaker as equals, as partners in destruction. The interesting wrinkle here is what WWE does with them next. According to reports, there were concerns within WWE that Breaker and Reed might actually get cheered by the fans despite turning heel. And you know what? Those concerns were valid. Because when you watch two young, incredibly talented wrestlers take out an established star and declare themselves the future, a portion of the audience is going to respect that. They're going to want to see these guys succeed. That's why WWE reportedly kept them off television the following week. They wanted the heat to build. They wanted fans to sit with what happened. They wanted to let Seth Rollins' absence be felt. And it worked. By the time Breaker and Reed did appear again, the anticipation was through the roof. But here's where the story takes another turn. Because Seth Rollins isn't just some guy. He's not going to disappear quietly into the night. Reports surfaced that Rollins suffered a legitimate shoulder injury during his match with Cody Rhodes at Crown Jewel. That coast-to-coast headbutt he hit might have caused significant damage. He was seen wearing a sling after the show. Medical tests were scheduled. And suddenly, the betrayal angle that was supposed to last for months got accelerated. Think about that for a second. WWE had to pivot their entire creative direction because of a real injury. Braun Breaker's turn on Rollins was reportedly planned for sometime in 2026. They were going to build it slowly, letting tension simmer, letting the cracks in the Vision show gradually. Instead, they had to pull the trigger in October 2024 because their World Heavyweight Champion might be out for several months. That's the beauty and the chaos of professional wrestling. Nothing is ever set in stone. Injuries happen. Plans change. But the best companies, the best creative teams, find a way to adapt. And WWE adapted by giving us one of the most shocking moments of the year. What makes this betrayal even more impactful is the history between these men. Seth Rollins and Bronson Reed were enemies. Bitter enemies. Reed hit Rollins with 6 tsunamis, trying to end his career, trying to put him on the shelf permanently. Then, somehow, they became allies. The explanation WWE eventually gave was that the attack built a mutual respect. That Seth saw something special in Reed and brought him into the vision. That Reed respected Rollins for surviving the punishment and coming back stronger. But respect only goes so far in WWE. Ambition is stronger. Hunger is stronger. And both Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed are hungry for championship gold, hungry for main event spots, hungry for WrestleMania moments. Seth Rollins, for all his talent and accomplishments, was in their way. So they moved him. The symbolism of Breaker holding the World Heavyweight Championship after the attack was powerful. He didn't win it. He didn't earn it in a match. But he held it like it was already his. Like it was only a matter of time before that gold was wrapped around his waist for real. That image told you everything you needed to know about where this story is heading. CM Punk, the man who earned a championship match that night, found himself in an interesting position. He was supposed to face Seth Rollins for the title. But if Rollins is out injured, what happens to Punk's opportunity? Does he wait? Does he face someone else? The questions started piling up fast. Meanwhile, Bronson Reed's story with Roman Reigns and the Usos was still unresolved. At Crown Jewel, Reed defeated Roman Reigns in an Australian street fight, a massive win for his career. But that victory came with controversy. GUSO cost Reigns the match, shocking the world by attacking his cousin. So Reed had unfinished business with the bloodline even as he was solidifying his alliance with Breaker. The chess pieces were moving all across the board. Multiple feuds, multiple storylines, multiple possibilities. That's when wrestling is at its best. When you can't predict what happens next. When every episode of Raw could bring another shocking moment. And speaking of shocking moments, let's talk about Paul Heyman's role in all of this. The wise man has been the most important non-wrestler in WWE for years. His ability to elevate talent with his promos is unmatched. When he speaks, people listen. When he aligns with someone, they instantly feel more important. He did it with Brock Lesnar. He did it with Roman Reigns. He tried to do it with Seth Rollins. Now he's doing it with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. The question is, can Heyman manage 2 monsters at once? Can he keep Breaker and Reed on the same page? Or will the same ambition that drove them to betray Rollins eventually drive them to turn on each other? History suggests that tag teams and factions always fall apart eventually. The Vision is no exception. It's not a question of if they'll implode. It's a question of when. Some fans speculated that Reed and Breaker might go after the tag team championships, using their dominance to elevate those titles by defending them against top single stars. Imagine Breaker and Reed as tag champs facing teams led by main event talent. That could be incredible. But both men have bigger goals than tag gold. They want world championships. They want WrestleMania main events. That competitive drive is what makes them so dangerous together, but it's also what will eventually tear them apart. You can't have 2 alpha dogs in the same pack forever. One will eventually challenge the other for dominance. And when that happens, when Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker finally face off one-on-one, it's going to be an absolute war. But for now, they're united. For now, they're the Vision without Seth Rollins. And honestly, they might be better off without him. Rollins was the established star, the veteran, the leader. But leaders can become crutches. They can hold back younger talent. By removing Rollins from the equation, Breaker and Reed are forced to stand on their own, to prove they don't need a famous name beside them to succeed. The wrestling world is watching closely. Fans are divided. Some think this was the best move WWE could have made. Others think Rollins should have stayed with them longer. Some believe Breaker is ready to be champion tomorrow. Others think he needs more time to develop. That debate, that conversation, is exactly what WWE wants. They want you talking. They want you speculating. They want you invested. This isn't just about one moment on one episode of Raw. This is about the future of WWE. Braun Breaker is 27 years old. He has decades ahead of him if his body holds up. He's the son of Rick Steiner and nephew of Scott Steiner, 2 of the most dominant tag team wrestlers in history. Wrestling is in his blood. He's got the look, the intensity, the athleticism, and the name recognition. Everything WWE looks for in a top star. Bronson Reed is 36, which means he's in the prime of his career. He's spent years honing his craft, years proving he belongs, years waiting for his moment. This might finally be it. The partnership with Breaker gives him the platform he's always deserved. The question is whether he'll seize the opportunity or let it slip through his massive fingers. The dynamic between them is fascinating. Breaker is the second-generation star with the pedigree. Reed is the self-made monster who clawed his way to the top. They respect each other's abilities, but that respect is built on a foundation of violence. They're not friends. They're business partners, allies of convenience. When that convenience runs out, all hell is going to break loose. And let's not forget about Seth Rollins. The man is one of the greatest wrestlers of his generation. Multiple world championships, WrestleMania main events, Royal Rumble wins, Money in the Bank victories. He's done it all. But he's never been on this side of a betrayal before. He's always been the one doing the betraying. Now he has to figure out how to come back from this, how to rebuild, how to get revenge. When Rollins returns, and he will return, the target on his back is going to be enormous. Breaker and Reed will be waiting. They'll know he's coming. They'll be ready. But Rollins is smart. He's calculating. He's the architect. He'll find allies. He'll create opportunities. And when he strikes, it'll be devastating. The potential matches coming out of this angle are mouth-watering. Rollins vs. Breakker. Rollins vs. Reed. Breakker vs. Reed. Rollins vs. Heyman's new vision. Triple threat matches. Fatal four-ways. Hell in a Cell. War games. The possibilities are endless, and every single one of them could be a show stealer. This is wrestling at its finest. This is storytelling that makes you feel something. Shock, anger, excitement, anticipation. You're not just watching characters perform scripted segments. You're watching a story unfold in real time, with real consequences, real emotions, and real stakes. Before we wrap this up, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about wrestling as much as I do. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and join the SLAMZONE family. We're building something special here, a community of fans who live for these moments, who appreciate the art of professional wrestling, who want to dig deeper into the stories and the characters that make this industry so incredible. Leave a comment below telling me your thoughts. Do you think Breakker and Reed made the right move? Do you think Seth Rollins will get his revenge? Who do you want to see as World Heavyweight Champion? Your voice matters. Your opinion matters. This channel is as much yours as it is mine. And share this video with your wrestling friends. Let's spread the word. Let's grow this community. Let's make SLAMZONE the go-to place for the best wrestling commentary and analysis on YouTube. The betrayal in Perth was just the beginning. The story of Bron Breakker, Bronson Reed, and Seth Rollins is far from over. New chapters are being written every single week. New twists are coming. New shocks are waiting around every corner. And I'll be here breaking it all down for you, analyzing every angle, every promo, every match. This is the kind of wrestling that reminds us why we fell in love with it in the first place. The drama, the athleticism, the unpredictability. When done right, when the stars align, when the story clicks, there's nothing else like it. And what happened in Perth was absolutely one of those moments. The vision has changed. Seth Rollins has fallen. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed have risen. Paul Heyman has chosen his side. And the entire WWE landscape has shifted beneath our feet. Where it goes from here is anyone's guess. But one thing is certain, we're all going to be watching. We're all going to be talking. We're all going to be part of this incredible journey. Thank you for riding with me through this story. Thank you for being part of SLAMZONE. Hit that like button one more time. Make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications. And I'll see you in the next video when we break down whatever insanity WWE throws at us next. This is SLAMZONE, and this is wrestling at its absolute finest.